Hello, and thank you for joining today's webinar, How to Achieve Effective Product Line Engineering with Compliant Variant Management, brought to you today by Polarion Software. To start our webinar, I present to you Yuji Wallach, Vice President, Product Management from Polarion Software.
Thank you, Gerard, for introduction. In the first part of this webinar, I will shortly introduce Polarion Software for those who do not know us. And then we go through the common challenges in current software and system development, how to release more product versions, variants, faster with better quality, of course by using Polarion Variant Solution. Afterwards, David Merrill will demonstrate Polarion Variant Solution in a live demo. At the end, it will be you who drive the session by asking questions, and we will all try to answer them to your best. So, Polarion Software. Instead of integrating island of automation, Polarion was founded in 2004 to start with a blank sheet to disrupt the industry. A year later, we launched the industry's first unified 100% browser-based ALM solution based on one repository, data structure, and business logic. But of course, we have not stood still, and the numbers speak for themselves. 2.5 million of users worldwide of Polarion solutions. 200 extensions in our extensions portal, a vibrant community of 5,000 registered members illustrate the value of Polarion solutions. And of course, customers. More than 250 deployments in leading companies from broad spectrum of industries, pure software development organizations, but also a large number of mechatronic customers that developed embedded software for medical devices, cars, airplanes. And Polarion has been also recognized by research analysts for a long time. For instance, Ovum stated already in 2012 that Polarion has managed to score well in market impact and customer satisfaction, plus exceptionally well in the technology dimension of the decision metrics. So that's about Polarion Software. Now, product line engineering and variance management. What are the common challenges? So in the most development project, there exists a critical need to reduce the cost, effort, and time to market of developed products. However, at the same time, customers are requesting more and more quality products, better products, tailored to their individual needs. Experience of many engineering organizations shows that the traditional way of development, which focuses the development activities only on the delivery of a single project, is not efficient enough to meet those challenges. A typical approach followed in the industry is to base the new projects on the results of previous project results. This kind of ad hoc reuse is inherent to human problem solving. If there are known existing solutions, they are used. Otherwise, similar solutions are considered and adopted where reasonable. Only if there are no similar solutions available, then the product is developed as a new product. Obviously, this saves time and effort during the initial development of the solution. But typical problems that arise during the clone and own development of several possible similar products are well known. The same functionality is developed several times for different products or for different customers. The same changes must be repeated for different products. Identical features have to be implemented and might behave differently depending on the particular product. Sure, it is possible to merge changes across different branches, but this is still not a solution. It's still not possible to predict the cost of introducing or to implement a feature from one product to the another variant, as you never know what are the possible conflicts between different branches. Some products cannot be updated anymore, and customers must migrate to another product variant or version simply because the changes are conflicting in a way that the merge is impossible. And finally, the maintenance effort explodes, and thus free resources for new product development become scarce. In other words, even though the clone and own approach help organizations to reuse the assets, it doesn't scale. It is clearly better to implement systems independent than implementing the systems independently, but only to a certain level of product versions developed and supported in parallel. Once the critical mass of number of variants is achieved, the organization will spend more time on the actual maintenance on synchronizing the changes between branches, on resolving the conflicts, than on the actual development of the new features and capabilities. The solution that scales, that enables organizations to create, exploit, and develop a family of related products at lower cost, reduced time to market, and better quality, is called product line engineering. Software and system product line engineering is a systematic reuse approach that views the products delivered by a development organization as members of the same product family, which have several common characteristics, but it shows also some differences, otherwise they would be the same products. It gives a full and clear understanding about variability and establish a full transparency to strategically plan the new variants. Variability management is a central component of every product line engineering approach. What is variability? Variability is a product line characteristic that may differ among products, no matter if you speak about functionality, quality attributes, supported environments, business constraints. It allows managing common and varying parts as well as their interdependency. So it allows organizations to configure, build, and manage the product line members in a fast and efficient way. Our experience in practice shows that organizations mature their reuse and variability management capabilities along the following model. They start with independent product development and proceed to standardized infrastructure. This is the first easy benefit of deploying an ALM platform, ALM solution like Polarion ALM. After standardizing their development infrastructure, often companies establish a platform first. They develop and maintain a common platform based on which the products or applications are built. The platform contains the development infrastructure as well as all the functionality that is common to all the products or applications. This means they focus on commonality and the support of variability only in a very minimalistic manner. In case they need to have the components different, they branch or clone and modify the actual products. Once the organization has achieved its first low-hanging reuse benefits, they increase the amount of functionality in the platform to the level where the functionality shared to several products possibly becomes part of the core PLE library. They establish the variability management to control what shared assets should be applied to selected variants. Let me rephrase it a bit. The product line engineering approach lets you move from minimalistic approach of reusing the common solutions only. This means from reusing the assets such as requirement specifications, test specifications, source codes that is really the same for all the products, to an approach that you can reuse easily also shared components, or even that you develop the specific solutions in a way that enables them to become shared solution anytime in the future. Depending on the degree of reuse between the different products, different degrees of variability support needs to be followed. If the reuse is minimalistic, then no variation points needs to be formally managed. But in a more balanced approach, the common aspects as well as the shared parts are supported in the core library assets. So the variation points for the application-specific extensions are identified as well. So in this maximalistic, also known as 150% approach, the core asset supports all the necessary adaptations, drive all PL members automatically. It means that whatever variant you want to build is being derived from the core library or from the core master specifications. It means everything is managed in the same way, no matter if the feature, requirement, a line of code is being common to all the solutions, to some, or just to a single specific product. Every single difference between the different products has to be exposed on the variation model. If the selected features of the variant are the same, then the product needs to be the same. The choice of which approach to follow best is strongly driven by the type of the business of the supported solutions. Is it project-oriented business? Is it product-oriented business? And especially also on possibility to predict the variability occurring in the products. How many different variants do you expect in the future? In recent years, sophisticated tooling for variability management has been provided, which allows organizations to evolve along the stages in a faster way. So organizations are directly adopting the maximalistic variability approach. We build a solution together with established variance management provider, Pure Systems, and the variance management natively into user interface of our Polarion ALM product family. Let me now pass the presentation to David Merrill, who will show us Polarion variance solution in a live demonstration.
Thank you very much, Jiří. It's certainly my pleasure to be able to speak with you all today. By short way of introduction, as Jiří mentioned, my name is David Merrill. I am a system engineer for Polarion. So in many ways, I would be the type of contact you might work with evaluating Polarion and working with Polarion in the field. This introduction of Polarion variance is a culmination of listening to our customers as they have been explaining to us these challenges that Jiří outlined. One of the elegant natures of this solution is how well it has been natively integrated into Polarion. The objects and operations that are common to a Polarion user today seamlessly factor into software product line engineering tasks that we'll go through. So for those of you new to Polarion, we're looking at a Polarion interface. It is a web-based interface, and so it's called my Weather Station project. This particular project is designed to be a fairly simple presentation of potentially a complex project, meaning factoring in these requirements of commonality, requirements of variability, and the efforts of quickly and efficiently producing mass customization requirements for product development. On the left-hand side, we have the Polarion navigation bar that shows me the context of my project and different operations available to me. In the right-hand side is the workspace. This workspace will change as I factor through my demonstration for you today. One of the things that you'll notice is the topics that Jiří mentioned are also very clearly annotated here. I can quickly move to edit a feature model. I can work to develop both my maximalistic or 150% specifications and dive right into building and defining variants. Now for ease of presentation, I'm actually going to begin in the middle. So if I were to click here, I'd be exposed to the master specifications page that as a dashboard to me gives me some basic instruction how I might design the format of my product development from the highest level, system requirements, down through technical design and test specifications. Here you can see that there's an outline for the powerful Polarion workflow engine that's behind all of these elements in the product. Workflows supply the documents and work items, the process enforcement, and the automation that lets you model in Polarion what you might have as formal or informal development practices. Here I have linked in the output some clear direction to the documents that we'll work with. So I'll move to another tab in my browser. By the way, Polarion is a Web 2.0 application. There are no installable clients to use Polarion. I could connect from a tablet as I am today, as easily as I could from a Mac laptop or a full Windows workstation. Even phones, whether they be driven by Android and using a browser or an iOS application, allow access to Polarion from any location. What we're seeing now is a Polarion document. This Polarion document looks a lot like a Word document, but it's quite different. It could have begun as a Word document, as I can easily import documents from your existing file repositories into Polarion and decompose them into structured requirements. So here, as I highlight this particular requirement sensors, you can see that it has some values displayed here of severity and status, and we'll talk a little bit more about this restriction in a little while. But what I can easily do from this perspective is create additional requirements just by pressing the Enter key. And I can efficiently add and maintain, say, maybe the base chassis as a particular requirement. And so my system shall have. Now, these requirements, of course, can be very simple, as we see here, or I can add to it very rich information, list items or tables, images, whatever is required to build a very vibrant requirement work item. I'll go ahead and save this here in the upper left. And when I do that, you'll get a sense that I'm not just saving a file, but rather I've updated a record in the Polarian database. It's also quite easy for me to slip and move away from the formality, or I should say the convenience of the document view into a more database tabular presentation that might be very familiar and preferred by many customers. Here in this view, I have exposure to not just the title and the textual description, but a wide array of attributes that will help describe this work item. Now, you might be wondering, why am I going through this process of explaining Polarian documents and requirements when we're really talking about variants? But this is essentially at the heart of the same procedures that we'll use when we go look at the feature model. And at the center of Polarian variants is one of the challenges that Jiří mentioned earlier, where moving from a document-based or a clone and owned environment where you don't necessarily have clear designation between the requirements that are common across the platform, which are shared by one or two or more product lines, or those which are very much unique to a given product line or offer unique features that might be part of future product lines yet undefined. This is at the heart of being able to use Polarian to track these requirements and make sure that I have adequate review and approval. So whenever I do things in Polarian, say, for example, just this creation of the item, I will be able to see any change that was ever made to these work items. I'll be able to control their process and move transparently back and forth between the presentation of the tabular view and the document views, which also, as you can see here, show a very rich history of not just my changes, but changes done by my colleagues. And at any given point in time, I can compare these changes and see how this master specification has evolved. Okay, well, I'm going to put aside the master specification for just a moment and move on to the feature model. So I'll leave this tab open, and we'll come back to this home page here where I'll open up the feature model in Polarian. And when I open up the feature model, I'll be able to see a Polarian document just like I had with the master requirements. But this time, instead of containing requirements, it's going to contain a statement of features that will be part of my product lines. So for example, as a mandatory feature, I have here the sensor data handling for this fictitious weather station. And the exclamation point here gives me an indication that that is a mandatory feature. Now, one of the things I'm going to do here also is I want to expose a little bit more of the Polarian attributes that are necessary to working with this feature. So I'm going to expose and show the sidebar on the right-hand side and visualize work item properties. We'll give myself a little bit more real estate here on the left-hand side. Then, as I move down through each of these items, I'll be able to see the different variation types that each feature can hold. And this becomes very important to the selection of these features together or independently within the variant selection process. I have mandatory features, I have optional features, I have or features, and alternative features. And we'll go into a little bit more detail what each of these means. So as I look at sensor data handling, you can see I have a mandatory feature for temperature, but then I have optional features for air pressure, humidity, or wind and rain measurements. So this means that I can pick any one of these optional features, but I must necessarily include temperature when making a variant selection of the weather station product line. If I go down through a little bit more, you can see that I also have the OR, which will allow me to select one of these and possibly more. I'll move down a little bit further and I'll come across an alternative feature. So if we look at the location feature here, I can see that linked to that feature is indoor, outdoor, or underwater or outer space. And this allows me to pick one and only one of these alternatives. So these settings regarding the features can be mixed and matched through a very rich hierarchy of top-level and low-level feature selection. In fact, we'll see here under this option When, I have a comment. So I'll click on the comment and we'll see that we need new features for a wired and a wireless wind anemometer to be able to measure the wind. So I'm going to go ahead and come down to my Polarian feature model, and I'll press Enter to create a new item. Now I'm going to press Tab to insert it into the hierarchy, and I'll also go back to explore this work item property that we had earlier, because if I select wind, I would like to have an alternative of either having a wired wind sensor, which I'll simply type out for our interest in the demonstration, and I'll set potentially another alternative as a wireless wind sensor. And so thereby extending and expanding this particular feature model, which I intend to plan and use in just a moment when I create my own special product variant that will include this. So what this will essentially mean is that if I happen to pick wind as a optional feature of my sensor data handling, I must necessarily pick either a wired or a wireless wind sensor. Now, one very important thing to note here with this Polarian feature model document is it's subject to the same type of workflows, the same type of approvals and digital signatures that a normal Polarian document that might hold requirements is. So I'll go ahead and put this aside for a moment and take us back to this home page. And you can see that I can use this home page as a way to quickly draw me back to moving through the process. Now, I have here, we already talked about master specifications, but it's also going to be very important to explore a little bit more about what's inside this master specification document. What distinguishes, for example, a requirement of commonality or a platform requirement, or a shared requirement, or a requirement of variability. And that's where we come back to this restriction field. So again, I'm going to show the work item properties here. And when I see the work item properties for sensors, there's a special field that displays here which is blank. This means it is not subject to any restriction. So whenever restriction is empty, this particular requirement, developed perhaps by an engineer, ratified and discussed in detail, has the level of knowledge to be able to determine which features this particular requirement will be subject to. If I come down to the system shall have a base chassis, I might make the same argument. Why, it's certainly okay if that all of the product lines will have to stand up somehow. But now I might come to another requirement which does have some specific restrictions here. And so I can enter in this restriction field and begin to populate more and more detailed information about the features that I just created and how those features will impact the necessity of this requirement in the documents and specifications that we build when we perform mass customization selection. So, for example, the system measures wind temperature in a range of measures temperature in the range of -30 to 10 degrees Celsius. And so I might go through and select or deselect. Perhaps I would say, no, it's not necessary to have all of this information, so I'll deselect those restrictions and only have this particular requirement restricted to the selection of the temperature feature. And so I can go through and select additional values. Now, maybe I would have, let's go ahead and create a new requirement here, and I'll call this maybe the outer space display unit. Now, obviously, this is going to be very challenging to have a weather sensor in outer space, so I want to make sure that only the features that deal with outer space are selected here. So I'm going to press Control Spacebar to be able to view, let me go ahead and save that, to be able to view the restrictions available here. So when I do this, I'll be able to locate, maybe I'm not sure where it is, so I'll just type outer, and you can see that it selects the feature that matches my text. And so I can select that value. Now this particular requirement will only be selected if that feature is selected in my variant. So I'll go ahead and save this as well. That process, of course, is going to become part of the regular elicitation of requirements, of designs, and also test specifications, because even though I'm restricting particular system requirements now, you can imagine that design elements, regulatory requirements, and test specifications will also be subject to the same kind of mass customization that requirements themselves are. Okay, I'm going to put this aside for just a moment and return back to the main page here, and it really tells me what's to happen next. And this next option is to go to the variant section. So I'll click in variants, and now I have a much different home page, which is tailored to the issues of selecting the features and ultimately being able to build the kind of documents for product development. So with some description and objectives, I have as inputs to this process the same master specifications that we've been working on, the same feature models that we've been using, and I can see here a very quick view of existing variants. Now, we'll come back and we'll look at that particular report in a minute, because what I'd like to do now is create a new variant work item. So this particular variant, my initials are DKM, so this is going to be the DKM Weatherman system. And my intention here is that this might become an OEM type of product that I will resell to my particular customers. But you can see as I create this, I am creating a Polarian work item of a particular type. So the look and feel of this item, just as I would do a requirement, these are going to be the same exact skill sets that allow me to come in and add additional information to this variant. Variant was requested. So I could, I suppose, go back and copy a document. I could start writing a specification from scratch. Without Polarian and without Polarian variants, that's likely what I would do. I would copy something existing, and now instead of just having referential data, I would have duplicated data. But what I'm going to do now is select the features that will be driven by my particular variant. So now I'm coming into the variant selection, and you'll note a couple of things right away. I'm alerted that I have two errors. I'm already missing information. And if I wanted to see what those was, I could quickly see what those errors were. I could quickly view them and find what items, what features are required by this variant based on the current selection model. And it tells me, in my way of thinking, the errors that you might see are the real reason why you need Polarian variants in the first place. Because without the detailed logic that we've established between features and the dependence or the restriction of requirements to features, I have to know every particular detail of my product in order to select the right values. But with Polarian variants, I can have a much higher layer of abstraction so that I don't have to know the specifics of the underlying requirements in order to come through and say, yes, in fact, I do want sensor data handling, and I do want to select temperature. Now, I've gone ahead and clicked them with the clear green box, but if I go down here to location, you can see that mandatory features are essentially selected by default. However, I'd like to clearly select them. Now, if you recall, one of the things that we added was an addition of two alternatives for the wireless and the wired wind sensor. So in addition to temperature, I'm also going to have rain measurement, and I'm going to have air pressure and wind. Now, when I save this variant, which I'll go ahead and do, so I don't have to come up with every setting right away, but I can provisionally save it and come back to it later. Now I have 3 errors. Now over here graphically on the left-hand side, it sort of gives me a hint of what's going on. If I click here, then clearly it's going to be able to tell me that there are open alternatives for the wired wind sensor and the wireless wind sensor. I have to select one of them. So I'm going to assume we're going to use a wired wind sensor, and we'll continue and select a few more. So we're going to have the location be outdoors. We're going to go ahead and mark the mandatory feature of sensor data transmission. And this time I have what's called an OR. So I could have a unit which supports both wired and wireless. And so additionally, I can go through and mark a few more of these options, which I'll do. Now, when I think I'm far enough along, let's go into capabilities, and we'll set the temperature curve, and I'll save my variant. This time, you can see that I don't have any errors. I don't have any warnings of requirement matching. I don't have any particular information. I'm ready to go. So if I move down through the rest of the screen here, I can view additional data of the features, or essentially what I'll do now is I'm going to move back and take a look at this particular variant again. So I'll go ahead and I'll refresh this. Now you can see that I have 15 features. I can select my features, again, if I want to add more, or I can compare this variant with other variants. And we'll do that in just a moment. What I'd like to focus on now is generating the documents that are going to become so important to building and manufacturing or producing the software that goes with the weather station unit. So first I'm going to locate my specifications. It's in a space called Master Specifications. It's called System Requirement Specifications. Now in doing so, it's probably a good idea for you to understand that even though we're talking about having a master specification document, that doesn't necessarily have to be one physical Polarian document. It could be located in many different Polarian documents. As you can see, I'm building system requirements and test specifications together. I could also be pulling user needs, especially if I'm thinking about a medical environment. Or I might be looking at specific SRS requirements that are given to me from a tier 1 OEM, an OEM automotive manufacturer, and I am a tier 1 supplier. So instead of generating those specifications myself, I'm using the specifications that were given to me by my customer, essentially. And of course, now I get to generate these documents. I'm going to put them in a different space. I'll put them in the variant space, but they could also go into different projects as well. And maybe I'll make this a little bit easier, and we'll call this the DKM weather system test. And we'll keep the other one as the system requirements, and I'll go ahead and generate those. Now, this generation is going to happen in the background. Sometimes it takes just a couple of seconds. Depending on the size and the amount of documents, it might take a little bit more. But what that will do is give us a little bit more time to explore the rest of this variants homepage. The variants homepage, in addition to being able to create new variants as we did before, I can go in and take a look at what my variant output looks like. And so here we can see that I have the DKM weather system OEM. I have the master specification, the feature model, and it's done with creating the test. And it'll probably take just a little bit longer for the requirement specification to be produced. It shows me all of the features that were included, and then it also shows me those that have been excluded by my feature selection. So I have full range to be able to view and manage all of my different variations. In fact, let's go take a look at a previous requirement specification that starts to look a lot like the master specification, But over here on the left-hand side, instead of seeing vertical bars in the margins, I see dotted lines. If I can have you trust me, I'm typing trying to change this information. I can't change it because what I've produced is a branched document in Polarian. And this branched document is coming from an original document which itself has its origins as the master specification of the system requirement. It also shows me the variant from which this particular document was formed. I certainly could, if I wanted to, amend this and add additional requirements that are unique to this particular variant. However, one of the things I might do if I discover that I'm missing a requirement, I can click on that original specification, and instead of adding this one requirement into a branched document for that variant, I can come back to my 150% specification, and maybe I would come down to non-functional requirements. And because I'm now thinking of creating an OEM line, I will say, let's move to the right spot. I will create a new specification to say the system shall allow for OEM branding. And this might be the beginning of a rich set of requirements that deal with labeling, that deal with configuration parameters, so that other companies can use my weather station in their particular application. But instead of creating this new requirement in that variant document, I've come back to the master specification and I've created a requirement of variability. And the only thing that leaves standing for me is to be able to come to that particular newly created requirement and be able to assert in the restriction setting of that work item the particulars of that feature, restriction, and dependency. Well, that concludes my part of the presentation for right now. So I thank you for listening in to this demonstration, and I'm going to pass the information back to my colleagues.
I think we still have some time to answer the questions from the audience. I will moderate this discussion. Can I link the MATLAB Simulink models with Polarion requirements? I can answer that. Yes, we provide a connector for MATLAB Simulink, so you can, of course, let's say, have a full traceability from the master or variant specifications down to the models, no matter if you speak about the system models in MATLAB Simulink or the software UML models, for example, in Enterprise Architect. Another question, maybe David, you can answer that. Can you set up a feature dependencies?
Yes, thanks for bringing that up, whoever asked the question. I unfortunately didn't cover that. It's very important to understand that I might define across my feature model both a dependency of requisition, it must have and rely on another feature, or it is in conflict with another feature. In fact, I might suggest that my wind sensor is incompatible or is in conflict with the feature for outer space location, since in outer space I can't measure the wind speed. And these are set up with the same type of Polarion links that I would use to build, say, traceability between a test case and a requirement. The practice is the same in Polarion, even though the linking role and the link meaning and how it impacts my project are quite different in both of those cases.
Another question. You said the Polarion variant solution is based on third-party technology. Do I need to install anything from third-party on the client? No, this is let's say this is wrong. I mean, what you are saying is that this technology we built together with a partner. It's, as David was presenting, all powered by the web technology, so you don't need to install anything on the client. You just access it with your web browser, and the solution is fully provided by Polarion software. you just need to install a little add-on called Polarion Variants, both on the server side, and you also need a special license for variance management capabilities. Another question, David, maybe you can answer it. It's a difficult question. Does the product line engineering apply also to agile software development?
That's a very interesting question. There's no limitation to how variance can be applied in an agile environment. In fact, the same abilities that Polarion gives the close changing environment of scrums or Kanban agile practices could also be applied to the selection of user stories, for example, and tests in a variance selection model as well. In some cases, if we took what we learned from some of our mechatronic customers that combine agile-based software development together with the stringent structures of V-model or waterfall electromechanical development, this is actually kind of a perfect marriage where the user stories of Agile become implementations of the more formally defined system and software requirements. So I would say that there's no boundaries to applying variance in any development practice. As a slight additional note, I would reference a customer that we have that's immediately taking control of their scenario of their work with Polarion Variants. However, they're using it for regulatory and safety requirements only in this case. And so that's a perfect example of applying variance that might have been seen to be designated to software product line engineering into a very complex structure for this particular customer that has to manage over 800 different specifications for safety testing, manufacturing requiremends, and exporting laws in order to be able to bring their products to the global marketplace. They use Polarion as the back end for being able to generate the unique set of testing specifications and labeling requirements that are used in their product development, testing, and distribution.
One more question, David. What is the difference between a branch and a variant specification? Maybe the question is, I mean, you are saying that the branching is really, let's say, old-fashioned traditional approach that cause some problems if you need to merge the changes back. So what is really the benefit if you anyway need to generate this variant specification branch? So what's the actual benefit?
I think that's a really good question. In fact, as you've mentioned, Jiří, if we go back in time 6 months before we had the use of Polarion Variants, we might have implemented the notion of product line engineering exclusively through the branching technology. So again, I think that's another example of why bringing variants and product line engineering into Polarion fits so well, because we had established some very fine practices, but without the intelligence of the logic behind the scenes that we get through the pure variance partnership, being able to then make sure that the logic transcends the traceability tree to include or exclude each and every requirement that's necessary. So the difference is I can branch today in a way that lets me, copy documents and have version visualizations of those, but merging them back in, that becomes more challenging. I have to know specifically what I include or exclude from that branch document. With Polarion Variants, even though it utilizes the branching technology, what I do is I'm able to regenerate that document time and time again. So the end documents become, if you will, more disposable in the initial parts of the product development process as I refine the underlying requirements, the number of requirements, the types of requirements I'm going to have in my product. In fact, even defining how broad the feature set will be. So instead of having to clone or copy and edit and merge, I regenerate those documents time and time again, perhaps, until I get it just right. So that's, I think, one of the things that I see that's the biggest differentiation. However, I also rely on the fact that behind that Polarian variants document is the same kind of branching technology, the same kind of skills and capabilities that are available to me before Polarian variants are still fully enforced. It's just very clear to me that that document had originated through the variants process.
Thank you for joining us to learn more about Polarian software and how we can help you achieve effective product line engineering with compliant variant management. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to reach out to us via our website or contact your Polarian sales or service representative. Again, thank you for your time today.